Hello, my beautiful girl. How are you?
Can you hear me?
I hear you now. I didn't hear you when you first answered. You always look so
Okay.
beautiful every time I see you.
Oh, thank you so much.
How are you feeling? How's your health? How are you doing?
I am feeling better. I just got to remember to eat on time.
I understand. So this is really an organic conversation. I'm going to
Okay.
ask you first to tell me who you are and a little bit about your life, your experiences, just briefly, whatever you wish to share, since this will be made public upon your review.
Okay. All right. So, and start now.
Yes, please.
All right. Well, I am LaShawnda Kendall. I am an IT project manager at Duke. I've been a project manager for about 10 years um, in technical projects. I am originally from Tennessee, and I moved to North Carolina when I was 12 years old. So if I go home, they say I'm from North Carolina. If I say where I'm from here, they say I'm from Tennessee. So um, I come from a place where I don't think I was supposed to be here. Um, where I'm from, it's very difficult to push through any type of ceiling as a Black person, let alone a Black woman. There's a lot of crime where I'm from. There are a lot of imprisonment of Black people for very small offenses, but they go to prison for long periods of time. There's a high rate of drug abuse, prostitution, poverty. Um, but I'm here. I'm married. I've been married for this year will be 18 years. I have a 16, almost 17-year-old son. Um, and I have nothing but brothers. I'm the oldest of cousins and brothers that I pray for every day, that they are not victim to what's happening in this world. Um, but that's about me. I pray every day. All I do is pray to
Absolutely.
try to be able to breathe every day.
Absolutely. So I've asked many people that I've talked to thus far this one question. Do you have the conversation with your son and with your brothers and cousins about what it means to be able to work, live, play in the society in which we live now?
We do. We have those conversations. My brothers try to be very in tune to what's happening on the news. They also try to make sure that they are active voters and understand politics as much as they can. But they also just know that some things are just not going to be for them. You know, things are not fair for people of color, Black people in particular. So we have those conversations. I'm lucky to have two of my brothers. My younger brothers are good men. All they do is go to work, come home, and work out. They do their best to try to stay clear of anything, which is odd to have to say because you think everybody does, right? Everybody tries to be good, but for Black men, it's harder. You almost have to do it on purpose so that people don't see them as a threat. My son is a lot more political than I want him to be. I want him to be a kid for a little while longer, but he can't be. He has to pay attention. He has to know what's going on around him. He has to be mindful of the things that he says and who he's around and what he hears. Um, so we're constantly talking.
That's wonderful. Um, is there any thought in your mind and in your prayers that gives rise to what happened to George Floyd 10 or 11 days ago could happen to your son or could happen to your brother simply for what he is accused of having a counterfeit $20, meaning his life was worth $20. Do you have those kind of things in your thoughts and prayers?
I do. When I saw the image, and you don't ever want to see stuff like that, right? You want to scroll past it. You want to turn the channel, but you can't. I didn't see George's face. I saw all of my brothers. I saw my cousins. I saw my god brothers. I saw my father. I saw them before I could recognize George, that was another man there. And it just broke my heart. Yeah. Because those are images that's not the first time I've seen that image, right? It's not the first time that we've seen someone actually die on tape. And what was so hurtful was that it was so casual.
Right.
There was no, sometimes you see things and you just know, oh, he really didn't mean to, but he did it. Or it just kind of happened. Somebody was, reacting too quickly, but this person seemed to be waiting for him to die.
Right.
And it was all a trigger. And all I could think about was, if I could go get all my brothers and bring them to me and hold them and make sure they were okay. My father told me a story that happened to him a while ago where he was mistaken for somebody else, pulled over by the police, and beat up by the police when he didn't answer the questions they thought he should know. And of course, I was a little girl and didn't even know this had happened, but what if it was him? What if that was my dad? So all I could think about was people that looked like me.
Yeah.
And so while I grieve George Floyd and pray for his family, I'm grieving my own family, because what happens, we can get the call at any moment. Yeah. We could be Brianna. We're working from home every day. We don't go anywhere. Who's to say that somebody can't just run in our house,
right,
and shoot us and say, oh, sorry, we thought you were someone else, and then move on with their life.
Or to live in an apartment building and have a police officer walk into that person's apartment and shoot them thinking it's their apartment.
Right.
I still am not able to process that. That's still a bit strange for me, because I mean, I know the minute I get to my front door, I know where I am. I don't even have to open the door.
Right. Right.
Yeah. So let me ask you, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions about your work and yourself first, but I want to ask you this question. I've asked almost all the women I've interviewed thus far this question. Are you an angry Black woman?
Probably. I think the first time I was called that, I couldn't understand why anger had to be the word. It wasn't even we weren't having an argument. We were not disagreeing. I was passionate about something, and I was just so excited about it. And I got feedback that you were perceived as the angry woman. You should be careful.
Right. Tone it down.
And tone it down. Be mindful of how you make other people feel. And I was much younger then, and I was so, whatever, you don't tell me. If I'm angry, you'll know I'm angry. But as throughout my career, I've thought about that. Like, I have to be careful. I already have a deep voice or a loud voice. I have to be careful if I raise it much higher than this. This right now is probably scary for some people. But the last time that I was called that, it was in response to someone at my desk standing over me, yelling at me.
Right.
And I was telling them to get away from my desk and leave me alone. Mm-hmm. And then the next response was, I was angry. And in that case, I was. You were in my personal space. You were yelling at me. This person was accusing me of something that I didn't do, that I had proof that I didn't do, and would not accept that. And at this stage in my life, I feel like you're going to call me anything.
Right.
So if you're going to call me angry, call me angry.
Yeah.
And if you have proof, show it to me. Because I can prove to you that I'm angry too.
Yeah. But in many cases, you're not angry. You're just, emphasizing a point you want made.
Yeah.
And always swapped around to meaning something else other than what your intent is.
Right.
So let me ask you another question. So you said you have been a project manager for 10 years. How did you start on that path?
So you've heard of the phrase that we have to work harder just to get half of what they got.
Absolutely.
Before I went to college, I took a break. After I graduated high school, I took a break to really try to think about what I wanted to do. And I thought I was going to be a store manager. And I was told, well, you can't be a store manager until you get an associate's degree. Okay, so then I went and got an associate's degree. I went back to school, got an associate's, and then I was the assistant manager. And so when it was time for a promotion, or when my manager left, and I was like, okay, I can do that job, I was told, you don't qualify, you're too young, and we want you to have a bachelor's degree. Okay, well then I left that job and I went to another job, and I said, I have qualifications to be a manager based on your job descriptions and your qualifications that you have listed on your site. And they said, well, we want you to have your master's degree. I said, okay, well, then I went and got a master's degree. And they said, oh, well, we don't have any spaces open for you, even though you have your master's. Do what you're doing now, and just do what you would do in this other role. And then when the space opens, we'll move you right in there. That didn't happen. So during that time, I had developed a liking to project management. So my master's, it was really my MBA, wasn't project management focused, but it was, of course, a business degree. So I said, well, let me get a second master's degree in project management, because that's really what I like. And surely they won't tell me I need another degree.
Correct.
And so I went over and I started working in the project management office at my last job. And my team leads didn't have the first degree. They didn't have a bachelor's. They were studying for it. They didn't have the experience. But it was okay, because I was going to get my second master's, and then I was going to show you I'm certified. I can do this. And then they told me I wasn't self-aware. So then I left that job. So how I got here is I tried to check all the boxes.
Yeah.
And in checking all the boxes of everything that you wanted me to be, I found something I really liked doing, something I felt like I had a talent and a natural skill in. And but you wanted me to then be this other thing. And so I moved over and started another job.
Yeah. And
so we started over.
Start all over again. So now you are a project manager at Duke, and do you supervise people, or are you a team of one? You froze. LaShwanda? Right now you are frozen, so we're pausing.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. You froze for a couple minutes.
My computer got too hot. It said it's too hot.
You need to go inside.
So I'm back now.
Okay. So did you hear my question, or do you need me to ask again?
What was the next question?
I asked you, do you, as a project manager at Duke, do you supervise a team, or are you a team of one?
I am a team of one.
And as a team of one, what does that responsibility look like every day? And what are the expectations from those who are above you and those that you provide services for? Do you find those to be fair and equal?
No. I find myself constantly having to level set the difference between a project manager and an administrative assistant. I find myself having to beg for information. I'm not given information automatically for projects that I should be working on. I have to kind of find out about things from other people that are not probably on the project or happen to be around the project somehow. But I'm expected to be able to deliver. I'm expected to be able to have the right answer at any given time. And the answer should always be yes.
Right.
If the answer is no, and it's not no from me, it's no from somewhere else.
You froze again.
I am so sorry.
That's okay. It's called job security. Technology always goes awry.
It's a little bit, we're both working sort of in the same space. So I was trying to go somewhere cool. And then my phone said, your laptop's no different. Well, I'm hot too. So
no worries whatsoever. We'll make up for the time before we're done. So
but yeah, the expectations for me are not as fair as people that have teams. I'm responsible for a lot of information all the time, and I don't have help getting it unless it benefits somebody else. So
that's probably the case for most of us. And I think the point that you made when we first started talking about having to work harder, be smarter, do more, just to be considered equal. So my next question is about money. So how you're 10 years into this career, do you feel that you are paid equitably?
No.
Why?
Well, when I look at the actual base salary for this position on an industry scale, I'm not quite at that base salary. I don't know what other people make in my office or other project managers make at Duke, but when I look online at how much I should be making, I'm not there.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so it was made clear to me that we won't go much further as far as a raise. I won't get many increases because I don't have the teams to kind of to show that I'm, I guess, doing my job.
We don't have, I'm told we don't have a lot of money to do a lot of raises and increases. So, no.
Yeah. I think I've shared this with you before, but I will tell you, when I was hired at Duke, I was hired because the law school had some trouble with an audit. And at the time I was working for Durham Public Schools, my salary was about $77,000, something like that a year. And when I started work for Duke July of 2008, I was paid $80,000 when I was hired. And my role was supposed to be a consultant for 6 months, and they were going to then let me go. But the work I did must have been sufficient, so they made me permanent on January 1st of 2009. And I had a colleague who I loved dearly, and he and I were very close. He was a white man, and we are still very, very close. And he would always confide, issues he had with work, problems he was encountering, different things. And so he became like a little brother to me. And he shared with me how much he made when he started the job in November of 2008. And at the time, he made almost $100,000. And no disrespect of him, he had 10 years of IT experience and a college degree. At the time that he came, I had 2 undergraduate degrees. I had a master's degree. I've been certified in almost everything you could be certified in, and he made more than I did. And so in 2015, I believe it is, he said, I want to be assistant director, or I'm going to start looking for a job. And so he did. And when he left, his responsibilities rolled into my job. So my job, I was the front-facing end of support, inventory, projects, things of that nature. And he was the infrastructure manager. So he left. I was literally given an ultimatum: you do his job and your current job, or we're going to let you go. So before he left, he and I had a come to Jesus conversation, if you will. He shared everything with me about his experiences with our leadership, with his application, and even the new job he was going to. And at the time he left, he made $135,000 a year. And to this day, I don't make that amount of money. And he's got no more education. He's got tons of experience, and he's a brilliant man, brilliant. And some of the times I hear, we don't hire people at the health system because they do not have a background in healthcare. He did not have a background in healthcare, but he went to a department and it has done exceedingly well. And the point I'm trying to make is, I am also considered an angry Black woman because sometimes my voice can carry. I'm not going to nod my head or agree with you just because you said it. I don't think that makes it right. So there are times when my relationship, especially with my leadership, is on the rails. So when I ask about money, is money tied to race? Is it tied to gender? What is the thing that makes women, and this is all women, Black, white, blue, green, and orange, all women pay less than their male counterparts, in your opinion?
I think there's an inherent or some type of deep belief that we are still inferior as women, and that we are not as capable or as valuable as a man is. So we should not be thought of to pay equally. I think there's also, when it comes to Black women or people of color, that there's a belief that we are not supposed to have a certain salary, that we can do without, I guess because people have seen us make something out of nothing. I don't know why, but I think there's this belief that we don't necessarily need a certain amount of money, whether we deserve it or not. we don't actually need it, so we can give that money to somebody else. And there's a relatability factor, because the people that are mostly given the money are the people that look like those people. And so they relate better to them and know what they would do with their money. And they don't consider what we could do, which is probably the same exact thing that they're going to do with any type of increase.
Exactly.
So,
Have you ever heard the term homosocial reproduction?
yes.
What does it mean?
Where I just keep myself around, or keep bringing people around me that look like me.
Exactly. The term had been, I think it was first used in 2007. It may have been a little bit earlier than that. I don't know exactly. But homo, same, social interactions, reproduction. I prefer to be with people who look, work, and think like me.
Mm-hmm.
And back in the day when I was younger, we called that the old boys club. Just meant that white men had the power and all the rest of us were standing there with our faces pressed up against the glass trying to see in.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it exists to the extent it did in the 70s and early 80s, but in a lot of ways it still exists.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the leadership across companies, across institutions, white, male, in some cases, white, female. Very few Black female and Black males and brown females and brown males. So when you hear the term homosocial reproduction, do you see that as something you should challenge or something you accept just because this is the way it is?
I definitely feel like we need to challenge it. I think there are days where I feel like I need to accept it in order to keep my peace.
Yep.
But most of the meetings that I walk in or that I'm a part of, I'm the only one that looks like me.
Absolutely.
And it is sometimes, especially during these times when we just saw all this violence against a race, it's sometimes very, very disheartening and demotivating.
Yep.
Which can then look like I'm not interested in doing the job, or I'm not passionate enough, or I'm just trying to play the game and hurry up and get it over with. But it can be very disruptive. And then you add the dynamics of what those people already seem to think of you and how they talk to you and how they don't respond or respond to you in the same meeting. All of that has to play, and we as women, we as Black women, have to constantly be aware of that term and be in a stance against it, so that we can be respected just a little bit, just to make it through that 1 hour meeting.
Do you think that if you challenge that your job could be at risk?
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely. If I say it too much, then they'll start looking at ways to get rid of that loudmouth over there.
Yeah. So
Because then it becomes, well, what are you doing to make this not what you want it to be? What have you done to contribute? Or, I have to hear their excuses, and then it's kind of put back on me to now find ways to make this environment more diverse, or teach you how to be more inclusive, so that it's not on them to change it. It's now on me, and I essentially don't have any say so in who you're hiring and who you elevate.
absolutely. And that is the same in my case. Although I am a senior manager, I literally have no voice, no power, no autonomy. And sometimes I struggle with that because I don't know what to do, because supervising, all of my staff except for one are men. One black man, one Asian man, and one LGBTQ woman, and all the rest are white.
Mhm.
And I feel like
Mhm.
a lot of times that they do not see me as smart enough to have the job, and I'm just there as a quota, or just because they have some reason to put me there, but not that I am qualified to do the job.
Mhm.
So let me ask you this question. What does the word diversity mean to you?
Diversity means having a bowl full of different fruit.
Interesting analogy. Very, very interesting.
All different fruit and on display.
But let's put that bowl of fruit on the table. So the biggest melon is a watermelon.
Mhm.
You have a honeydew melon and a cantaloupe, and you have strawberries, blueberries, cherries, and all these other things.
Mhm.
The first
Mhm.
bowl of fruit,
Mhm.
the largest piece of fruit, takes up most of the room.
Mhm.
And so although you have diversity, in many cases, you may not just have a mixture of different fruits, but that watermelon may carry the day, although we all
Yeah.
say it is diverse.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yep. And so, as your time at Duke and other places have you worked, have you found examples where diversity works?
Not without inclusion.
Exactly.
Because everywhere that I've worked, the largest piece of fruit, that watermelon, is the one that makes the decisions,
Yeah,
and they choose other melons to be other decision makers.
exactly.
And so without inclusion, without having the opportunity to promote the different types of fruit, without that ability, diversity can't work.
Exactly.
The other fruit goes rotten.
Exactly. Or because of their size, their voices are not heard.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So I know that you co-chair a diversity group at Duke, a diversity IT group at Duke. How long have you been doing that?
I just we're just choosing new, so I'll eventually be the actual chair, but I've been there for 2 years working with Diversify IT.
And so in
So in that role,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Nope, I was probably asking.
I was going to say, in that role, I get to meet and work with different IT professionals that I wouldn't necessarily get to meet in my current role. And I get to see that there are people who kind of have the same plight as me that don't look like me.
Right.
And don't sound like me, and don't have my experiences, but have the same issues that I do have.
Exactly. What is your hope for that group? What is the ultimate outcome for that group?
Well, at first I thought it was a place where we could be heard, where we could hear each other and just know that we're not alone. That was kind of the first few months. I thought, this is good just to know that you're not crazy, that this is not just happening to you or just your department. But as we started doing more programming and talking to more people, for me, this group is really one of the go-tos of how to find resources for help and how to help people who don't have a voice present their voice to other people that are not part of this committee.
Excellent. And so I am an opponent of meetings to meet. A lot of times we have meetings upon meetings upon meetings, and we all have intentionality, but in reality, what we intend to happen and what happens are usually very, very different and very diverse. So your group, with the intentionality of providing a space for people to have their voices heard, do you have the power to affect change? Do you have the power to help those that are in harm's way, for lack of a better term?
Not as much. We can only bring it to the table. When I think about power, I think about being able to say, you're required now to do this for this person, or from now on, this cannot happen. We don't have that say so, but we do have the ability to say, hey, manager, these are things that we're hearing from your shop, and these are things that I think could help you be educated on these issues so that you can manage better.
Excellent. So we have about 4 minutes. So I'm going to ask you one last question, then I'll leave the last 2 minutes for you to talk. So in the world that we live, we see protests, marches, rioting, looting, and every kind of permeation of what's good and bad about the lives of Black and brown people. What are things you can do to advance the cause for Black and brown people, for Black and brown women, for women in general? What are you willing to do to move this from conversations and protests and marching and talking to action?
Education is to me key. Having the wisdom, having the know-how, having the next steps is going to be key. So I will be trying to educate myself as much as possible so that I can share that information, and then help people form alliances so that they know where to go, how to vote, what information to look for to arm themselves, to build on their own emotional intelligence, to help them have the right reaction at the right time. That's what I want to be able to do, to share, because I think a lot of times we just act, and we're not allowed to be emotional as women, as Black women, because then we get labeled as something other than what we're trying to explain or portray. And so I would want to be able to share with people, this is the way that you fight this. Sometimes it's not going to be yelling. Sometimes it's not going to be protesting. Sometimes it's actually going to be calling this person. So arming myself so that I can arm others.
Thank you. So the final 2 minutes are yours to share anything you wish, to say anything that you think matters in your story that has not been said yet, and anything else you may want to do.
I think it's important to remember when we're having these diversity conversations that these conversations don't just happen between Black people, or they don't just happen between that one white friend you have or that one Black friend you have. I think it has to happen. It has to continue to happen among all groups and at every type of event: church, school, work, grocery store, parking lot. It needs to continue to happen. I'm hearing now that people are just now kind of waking up or understanding what's really going on with the world. And those people that are just waking up, they have the ability to fall back to sleep. They have that privilege to hide again. And so we have to be careful in how we wake them from their slumber. We have to be careful that we aren't scaring them back to sleep or forcing them back to sleep so that they can just feel comfortable. And
Right.
so the conversations have to keep going. We have to be patient with each other. We have to try to educate ourselves as much as we can on how we have been trained and how we have thought about each other. Because, you know, we all can say we think that other people think this of us, but we also have to take responsibility for what we think of them, and how we respond to them, because a lot of people's reactions are based on those things. A lot of people have a defensive response to you before you even, you know, say anything.
Yeah.
So we got to keep having these conversations.
Well, I thank you very much for talking with me today. I am very proud of the work that you're doing. I am very happy that you are sharing a group to think about this and to give voice. I hope that through your work, you're able to bring about change, to change the narrative. Because we can talk all we want to, but at some point, there's going to be somebody else putting their knee on some person's neck, whether they be black,
Yeah.
brown, or white. What was really
Yeah.
interesting for me was to see the police push that old white man down and he hit his head, and the fact that he had to go to the hospital. So it is not always black, because if you
Yeah.
disagree with the status quo, you're more likely to be pushed down, stepped on, shot, tased, or killed. So thank you, LaShwanda. I greatly appreciate this, and I value our friendship.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.